As one may tell by looking through my channel, I talk about a couple different things. And because of that, not all of my friends share all of the same interests that I have. Some of them only like card games, and some of them like both. But as with all things, you try to make your friends try what you like. So after one of my fighting game enjoyer friends wanted to try Magic, after he had hit Legend in Hearthstone, Platinum Master Duel on launch, and Masters in... I was excited for his journey. He built Mono Red Aggro, and exclusively played it in the best of one format. It's faster. But he didn't make it to Mythic rank or whatever it's called, he called it quits at Plat. I learned a lot from watching a beginner pick up the hobby that I've spent so much time enjoying, like how aggro isn't actually brainless, but we'll get to that another day. My friend came to a conclusion at the end of his run. He said that he didn't like lands. Granted, he only played for so long and exclusively played Mono Red, so he doesn't exactly have the full picture. But his opinion isn't an outlier. Newer players getting into Magic, from anecdotal evidence, aren't big fans of the land system. And who could blame them? Once Hearthstone had their mana system, the Magic mana system just seemed a bit extraneous, unnecessary, clunky. But as the title suggests, lands are pretty neat, and we're gonna go into why. What is the point of land? Lands tap for mana, and you need mana to pay for spells. Creatures, sorceries, equipment need mana to be cast, unless they don't. The higher the mana cost, the stronger the spell. And because you can only play one land a turn, it naturally leads to progression. Play a land a turn, and every turn you can spend more mana on cards and play even better cards. This is something that makes sense, and many other card games have worked on a very similar system. Something like Hearthstone doesn't ask you to play a physical card, it just ticks up your mana at the start of your turn. Same concept. But lands aren't exclusively used for mana. They also have other utility uses. Lands can help you draw, make your creatures unblockable, turn into creatures themselves, draw cards, exile graveyards. They can do just about anything. Sometimes it's too hard to run these utility pieces by themselves, but if it's attached to a mana source you need to play anyway, it becomes a lot more justifiable. So if lands make sense, then why did my dumb stupid friend have so many complaints with them? It certainly didn't help that the games he played before either didn't have a resource system or just gave it to you for free. But this is the point that he made. Lands feel really bad to miss early, and it feels even worse to draw them late. He was playing aggro, so he opens a really good hand, is just missing a land or two, so he keeps. And just hopes to draw into lands, the most likely draw in the entire deck. And it really feels bad when he doesn't. And in the later game, once the game comes down to the draw, the top deck, what's the worst thing you can pull off the top? The single most likely draw in your entire deck, the card that is more likely to show up than any other card in your deck. A land. And out of your 60 card deck, you just gotta run so many of them. It doesn't feel good when you're all but forced to run a card, and so many of them while you're at it. Lands progress your game and your game plan, but by themselves they don't do anything. And they aren't particularly interesting. The game is all about casting these big cool spells, lands are not that. These arguments are mostly due to feel, and I will admit that there is some credence to them, even though they are a flawed way of viewing it. But now, I'm going to argue in favor of lands. At least conceptually, lands are cool, lands are good, and lands allow for complex decision making. Now, if there were just one universal land card, then I wouldn't be here arguing this. But even if we only consider basic lands, you have 5 options. 6. And all of them produce different colors of mana. I will agree that the application of lands in actual gameplay is more limited, especially compared to the decision making you have to do with other cards. But where the lands really shine is in the other aspect of the game, within the deck building. Deck building is half the battle, something that I've repeatedly tried to make clear. The skill and challenge comes long before you sit down across from an opponent, and a big part of that complexity comes from your lands. The first question these cards ask you is how many? There is no rule forcing you to run lands in your deck. There are even decks that don't run any lands, but that's beside the point. So how many lands do you run? It depends on you and it depends on your deck. If you are running something like a mono red aggro deck, then you don't need to run as many. You won't be getting to the later turns anyway, and you don't nearly have enough gas to even spend all that mana. But a traditional mid-range deck, or just about any other deck, will need to run a couple more. They want the game to last longer, so they'll need to be prepared to thrive in those later turns. Aggro decks are cheap decks, low mana creatures and low mana spells. If you want to play stronger cards, you'll need more mana, more lands. Your resource management is in the hands of the player, not the system mechanics. Magic is a game all about colors. The 6 colors of mana. Each color has its own identity and its own strengths and weaknesses. which is why the player base have grown so attached to colors and even color combinations. Cards have mana costs, and these mana costs can be either vague or specific, either any color or a specific mana color. And this is another way to balance cards. If a card only needs 1 mana of any color, then it's easier to get out than a card that needs red mana specifically. A card like Phyrexian Obliterator, while only being 4 mana, is still a bit of a chore to get out because it needs all 4 of those mana to be black. The stricter the mana cost, the stronger the card can be. An Obliterator is a strong card. And in a similar regard, multicolored cards. Just because there are 5 colors doesn't mean cards are restricted to those 5. You could have a 2-color card, a 3-color card, a 4-color card, or even a card that costs all 5 colors. These cards are even harder to get out because they require different mana generated from different basic lands. I'm repeating myself here, but stricter mana requirements, stronger cards. But if you want to play a card that requires both red and blue mana, you can't just fill your deck with mountains. Scratch that. If you want to play a card that costs blue mana and another card that costs red mana, you need to play more than just mountains. Each color has its own specific strengths and weaknesses, but if you run multiple different colors in your deck, they could theoretically cover each other's weaknesses while retaining their strengths. A Golgari deck is able to provide the disruption and interaction and card draw that black provides, while also having access to ramp and efficient creatures that green have. Monocolored decks have inherent weaknesses, but if you run a multicolored one, you get all the benefits of each color with no drawbacks, right? Not exactly. Once you start running multicolored decks, the specific land you draw starts mattering a lot more. The number of lands you play may remain the same, but you'll certainly need to adjust the numbers. Maybe half of your lands are islands and the other half are mountains. And running different lands creates inconsistency. You already need to hit your land, now you'll need to hit the right land. And with every additional color you add in, the greater the inherent inconsistency, but the greater your versatility and power level. Something that a game made a bit later did not seem to subscribe to. I can't say it's just lands, it's the magic mana system. What the two combine to create player agency in this part of deck building. How many of each type of land to run, which cards of each color can you afford to play, how much consistency do you give up in the deck building process to assist your power while playing the game. Multicolored decks are very common, because despite what I've been implying, there are more than just basic lands. And if you want a land that taps for multiple colors of mana, first you can only run 4 copies of it. It isn't a basic land. And second, there will always be additional drawbacks. Whether it be you can't spend the mana on the same turn, you need to return other cards to your hand, or you need to sacrifice some life. The point is, if you want some more versatile lands, you'll have to sacrifice something else. Dual lands are an exception, but those cards are expensive, dumb, and won't get reprinted anyway, so just pretend they don't exist. So what color of lands do you want? Which specific lands do you want? And how many of each land do you want are all things that need to be considered. Lands are a deck building quandary that is interesting, challenging, and deep. While I focus mostly on the deck building aspect, there can also be depth found elsewhere. Lands in play aren't just a resource. Card creators can utilize lands in interesting ways that aren't just about your mana pool. There are many cards that benefit from you playing or having lands. Landfall triggers, Ren and 6 being able to infinitely recycle lands by adding back fetches with her +1 effect, and the Gitrog monster letting you play more lands, sacrificing lands, and benefiting off of them. And the Tron lands with their inherent synergy and mana acceleration. The point is, lands aren't just a way for players to customize the inherent tempo of their deck. Adjusting this tempo can be a game plan in and of itself. Lands are cool, I've made my case. So why did my friend have such a problem with them? Is he an idiot? No, it has to do with the way he approached the game. Coming into the game as a newcomer, he did not know the cards, did not know the interactions, and wanted to just jump into playing the game. So what did he do? He skipped the deck building phase and just net decked. And so he didn't get to experience the nuance that lands have in deck building, which is why he formed his opinion. The landscape of card games have changed. It's much easier to find someone to play with now that you don't have to go and sit down in a physical shop. And along with the accessibility of play, the accessibility of finding lists also exploded. I think the biggest example I've seen is how Hearthstone players have handled it. Everyone is out here sharing the decks they make, taking pride in the fact that their list is the one that everyone is using. And none of this is inherently bad. Some people just want to be able to play, and if they net deck to do so, so be it. Not everyone has the time to learn all the cards or even want to participate in that aspect of the game. And because of that, some people may end up with an apathetic view towards lands, which is unfortunate. And maybe it's why the concept of the independent resource card keeps showing up less and less. Look at Lorcana. but I'm not here to pontificate over that. I'm just here to say, hey, lands are pretty cool.